I'm going to try my other camera again. Ooh, if it'll let me. Oh, maybe not.
No Esri this time?
No, Esri.
Okay.
She's back to
She's
normal
back-
and I'm not
back
at
on
home.
track?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good deal. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Ann.
Hello, how's it going?
All right.
Hmm. How you doing, man? How's
Pretty
Monday?
good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Well, I don't know. Should we wait for Kendra or should we just jump in? I didn't hear anything back from her. Although I just kind of was chalking it up to how she never checks Slack. So. Yep. Oh, I've got this phone isn't working, so I'm going to take that away. Oh, there we go. Hey. I should have set it up so we all like yelled hi at her when she jumped out. Hey. We were hoping you were going to make it.
I am here. I'm not feeling great, so we'll see if
Oh,
I
no.
can make
no.
it through the whole thing. But
Oh, shoot.
I'm here.
Same as before or just a new thing?
It's a new thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's maybe that's good though, right? If it's going to be oh, sorry, that's no fun.
That's okay.
Okay. Let me get my notes. I am better prepared today than I was last time around, that's for sure. I think each of you are going to like see some things that are familiar to you from various points in the past or your own background. At least some of you will, based on what I wanted to bring up today anyway, and we'll see where the conversation goes. But I think that what we've kind of uncovered, and I wish Ed and Candace were here because they're really big on this stuff too. But I think what we've uncovered is like the starting point here is essentially identity work, like going inward and understanding who we are, and like trying to clear the clutter or even just get a better understanding of that than we may have had ever potentially. Right. Because again, the whole thing here is like inside out. It's not just putting a system in place or a hierarchy or a set of criteria or anything like that. Right. It's like we want to operate authentically from who we are. So that Hoove and I have done this kind of work together a lot. That was a big part of why I moved to Kansas City, actually 8 years ago. So, and he was involved with it then. And I thought today we would just start with like back to square one on that front. So what I'm going to do is have us all, like if you have a pen and paper or something, pull that out. I'm just going to do a few minutes of quiet, basically listening, meditation or reflection, whatever you want to call it. And just a little guided meditation / prayer. So I'll lead it and then we'll be quiet and I just want you to write down kind of whatever comes to mind as I pose questions. Okay. And we'll just spend a few minutes doing that and then we can talk about it if we want to. All right.
Sounds good.
Cool. So, yeah, Lord Jesus, I'm just going to invite you into this conversation and into this time because as much as we resist it at times, we know that you know what's best for us, and not just in like some kind of pious religious sense or like a morality sense, but in an actual like operational sense. Like, what's the best decision we could make? What's the best way of looking at things? What's the best information we could have to make good decisions or just know what to do? So we just want to ask for your insight and welcome your input into our hearts and minds and thoughts and really who we are. So, Lord, I just want to ask first reflection, first thought. We'd love to get some insight on basically what Psalm 139 says, search me and know me and reveal the false way in me. What obstacles or blocks or false beliefs, false views of myself or the world or of you do I have in me right now that's preventing me from reaching my full potential or just being the best version of who you've created me to be? So what's false in my life that you want me to know? And maybe even more specifically, what identities have I lived with? Like names that the world has labeled me or that I have inadvertently labeled myself that hurt me, that are negative, but that aren't really based in truth. And Lord, as these beliefs or names or whatever false things come up in my mind as you reveal them to me, what are you inviting me to do with them? Yeah, what does it look like to be separated or have those untrue things separated from me? Did I even know they could be separated? And Lord, what would you offer me in exchange to replace those harmful things or those false things? Like, what's the truth you want me to know? What's the name you want me to go by instead of the false name? Or what's the perspective you want me to see instead of my own limited perspective that's been guiding my thoughts and minds and thoughts and feelings and behaviors and everything? And Lord Jesus, is there anything else you want us to know? Anything else you want me to know in general? Okay. Well, how'd that go?
I got a couple things. Mostly I just wrote down the questions
Yeah. Yeah.
as you were stating them, but a couple things I had immediate answers to.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. There's like, it's interesting because, you never know how fast or how slow to go because everybody might process at different speeds, so a lot of times, yeah, it's good to take the questions and, spend further time or whatever, but anything that you'd want to share.
Yeah, I can share the couple things I actually wrote down answers for. So the identities, what identities have you lived with that have negatively impacted you or untrue?
Yeah.
I put that I'm camera shy, quiet, soft spoken, in a room full of people. I'm the person who's not heard.
Hmm.
And then the only other thing I got was at the end when you asked if God would want to reveal anything else to us. I felt him say, you're more than your brand. Because I've worked so hard to become like this branded person, but I feel like he's saying, you're more than just Boom Tag Media or even your podcast. It goes deeper than that.
Nice. That's cool. How'd that make you feel any particular way, or like how'd that resonate for you?
That end statement was pretty powerful because I don't know, I just felt it drop in my spirit, and that's been a while since I've felt anything like that. But it's also been a while since I've seeked and I've listened too.
Right. I know what you mean. Like the simplest thing, and it's the easiest thing not to do,
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah.
What was the first question again? You noted it, Kendra. You said, what identities have what?
Have I lived
forget.
with that have impacted me negatively or that aren't true?
Okay. Because I just wrote answers. I should have wrote the question.
You know the questions by now. No, I know.
Not exactly. I'd like to get a better wording of them. I
We-
mean,
oh.
I ask them a lot, but it was worded well.
Well, we have the recording, we can go back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's whatever version of Psalm 139 you want to apply, it's like what's
Right.
hidden from myself, what's in me that's hidden from me, essentially,
Yeah, I mean, what came to me in that initial question was complainer, that I've kind of taken upon myself. I think other people have called me I don't know, maybe no other humans have called me that, but
Hmm.
I find myself calling me that. And and um and then the other terms that came along with it are like, I don't have a good enough curriculum, I'm not productive, I'm not helping people achieve their desired outcomes. And then I think after that it was like a big puff of smoke. So
Hmm.
that was kind of around that initial couple minutes.
Yeah. A puff. Yeah.
And then later it was like the words discipline, precision, attention to detail, keep developing leaders, but also keep developing followers.
Hmm.
Those were some of the things I was hearing.
Yeah. Like what's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, that's that's about what I wrote. That's all I made notes of.
Yeah. Well, that feels like significant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, do you guys get where we're going with this, right? I mean, it's like unheard, feeling like you're unheard as an identity, like that defines you as like you're a person who's not heard. Think about the
Mhm.
impact that has, like, or a person who's not enough, not doing enough, not good enough. My stuff isn't enough, not helping enough people. You know what I mean? Like that is impactful. And we're like not consciously aware of it typically. It's
Mhm.
just there. And it's literally powering how we operate in the world, like trying to compensate for it or trying to overcome that as a deficit. And, it's like, what if it's not even true that that deficit exists? We just believe that it's true. It's
Mhm.
easy to believe that it's true. There's like, there's evidence, or, it's easy to point to evidence maybe. But it's also, there's also a lot of evidence to the contrary that we just tend to overlook. Right. So it's
Yep.
like, it's just this it's subtle, but it's important. I don't know. I think it's important. How's this land for you, Jonathan? We never really like sat and talked about this approach to things. I don't think so. I don't know. Is it like, how's it land for you?
No, this is good. I mean, I think when you take a step back and you understand where you have allowed other people to define you for you, it will either subtly or dramatically change the way you work. And so, I've talked a lot about this on a couple of different podcasts that I was a guest on. Like when I became a dad, I started thinking about things a lot differently because I added a component to myself that it's like you add that component without thinking about it. you
Hmm.
Other components of your life maybe just kind of they gradually become part of you, but when something was added and it was such a drastic change to my identity, it started helping me think about it more fully. And then even the idea that self-talk becomes reality, and if you're not careful, um, allowing something to subtly become a part of who you are just because you're either allowing other people to say it to you and then you rehearse it to yourself, or you rehearse things to yourself to other people. And so I think this is important when I look at the difference between um, being a small business owner and coach because it was my only option after I left a job versus this is like what I was designed to do. Those are very different spaces to be in.
Mhm.
And one is scarcity minded and one's abundant minded. And it
Right.
has a huge impact on how I show up. It has a huge impact on how I write, and how I listen and how I talk to myself. Big.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's funny, like you just mentioned it, like what the things that other people say and who kind of alluded to that too. And just that thought makes me think of, okay, like of the things that I think other people are saying about me are those labels that I'm getting, the names. What percentage or what portion of them is actually coming from other people? Or is my mind telling me is coming from other people? You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that it's mostly in my head, or in my spirit, but
I think that's the assumption that people do things intentionally, and that is not a good assumption.
right.
When we take the content of a conversation and we filter it through maybe a negative space or through the totality of that relationship not being a great trajectory, we distill from their words more frames, more terms, more identities than they even intend. They're haphazard.
Totally.
This is something I've coached some of my clients on, actually. It's like, if you have a toxic person in your life, they are haphazardly toxic. Most of them we wouldn't label as high level genius in their toxicity. Like, they're not doing it on purpose.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, they just kind of
Yeah.
exist in this tornado of bad stuff. So we are the ones that take it on ourselves, and then all of a sudden we have learned things that we shouldn't learn. We have added stuff to our identity that wasn't intended.
Mm.
And we've undermined our worth on our own.
Right. I think we have help doing that, but it's in the spiritual realm rather than in the human realm. It's like the powers and principalities, right? Like that negative, like the adversary, however you want to characterize it, but it is like a spiritual adversary. And I think it can speak through any voice. Like, it doesn't have to be a person I would label as toxic. It could be my best friend or my wife or whatever. Like, they could say something or intimate something or whatever that, like, they didn't even consider to be negative or critical or anything, but I could receive it that way.
That's
Totally.
true.
Because of the
Totally.
interpretation, like the filter. It's like the filter that is coming through to me, which is mental, emotional, spiritual, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a
stuff.
danger to being somewhat emotionally intelligent, because what happens is we see patterns and we can see the trajectory of a pattern, and so we take the trajectory of our own life and we can not live in the power of the spirit that says, no, things can actually change trajectory. That if we see ourselves going one way, we forget that we can change trajectories. And that's, those things are seasonal, and we all have downtimes, we all have plateaus, and getting to the point where we make the pivot from, assessment, I see, to now we need to do something different. What it does is it prevents us from going too hard into this was bad and that's who I am. That's not the right response.
Yeah. Or let me even like jump on top of the piggyback on that one, I guess, because like, who says it was bad? Like, what if it's more true that it felt bad? But you ever had an experience where like you hated going through it and it was hard and difficult and you would have qualified it as bad, but then later you looked back and say, yeah, that sucked, but I actually wouldn't trade it. Like, that helped me ultimately. So does that make sense? It's like,
Yeah.
what if we could adopt the
sure.
perspective that things that feel bad aren't necessarily harming us? It's like it kind of starts to tie in the cliche things like, God works all things together for the good, and like have joy in trials and all that kind of stuff. Because we could actually have the perspective in real time while quote unquote bad things are happening. And I'm not saying this is easy or something, but like, I think it's what's possible, right? It's like, this sucks. It feels bad. Like, in my judgment, it would be bad. but is there a perspective that would show me something higher than that, that although it doesn't make it not suck or not feel bad, that maybe I don't have to judge it as all bad.
And I think what's important there is appropriately putting things in the right bucket, because it's not that there aren't things that are in fact harmful, but I think too often we put the things that are just sharpening and growth opportunities into the harmful bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a space for recovery from harm that might look and feel the same, but it's not the same when you come from a position that's ultimately going to benefit you.
Yeah, just like a bigger perspective on it. Yeah. Nice. All right. Anne, any thoughts?
Well,
Optional.
going back to the beginning of the stuff,
Yeah.
the questions. Yeah, I was thinking like the first thing that that my brain went to was like imposter syndrome sort of things. Just like self-doubt and those sort of
Yeah.
issues that I feel like end up coming up in like all of these masterminds.
Mhm. Yeah.
But then I was like thinking of like what's the opposite of that? Like what's the other side? And the word that came to my mind was courage. But I don't know. I mean, I would definitely like to sit with all this like
Yeah.
for longer for sure. But I thought that was interesting that like courage was like the first thing that popped into my head as like what would the opposite of imposter syndrome be? So
That's so interesting, because you know how that ties into the 10X book? Did you guys see that comment I wrote in Slack last week? Because like as I was sort of processing our conversation last week, because we didn't talk about it, I don't think in any of the sessions, but the 4 C's that Dan Sullivan has, where it's let's see if I can find it here.
I don't think I got to that part of the book then.
Well, it may only be, it actually might only be in the audio where they're talking about it, where they debrief the chapters. I'm not sure if it's even written in the book.
I don't think it is, because I was looking for it too, and I had listened to that interview between the two of them afterwards.
Yeah. So you don't think it is written? Yeah, I think it's maybe in one of their other books or something. But so the 4 C's are confidence, capability, commitment, and courage. And he was talking about how in order to 10X, this kind of gets to what you were talking about, Jonathan, like capabilities and confidence to do things really well are like what we're shooting for to 10X to make a jump. But what Dan Sullivan was talking about in that little bit was that commitment and courage precede our jump in capabilities, which then gives confidence. So it's like we tend to wait for the confidence or feeling like we have the capability. And they're saying it's exactly the opposite. What you need most is the courage to make the decision to do it and the commitment to doing it. That's how you combat imposter syndrome. Isn't that interesting? And then you get better as you go, of course.
Mm-hmm. On the question with what truth can I replace this with, before you brought up the 4 C's, I had wrote down confidence.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right.
And
That's
what's
awesome.
funny is that you mentioned courage and commitment. So you did. So maybe it was like stuck in my brain. It was left over from your comment on Wednesday.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like Kendra, you had that in your mind there, confidence, and I don't know if that was there before or not, but I like how those kind of things tie together when we practice this type of discipline and like listening. I know we've experienced this kind of stuff before, you know? It's like you start to get common threads of thought and you're like, It's a little bit too much to be a coincidence, you know?
And not to mention
Um,
that's just like educationally appropriate. When you have to regurgitate information, your brain has to like refire that thing again and the memory is solidified.
mm, hmm. Say that again. That's good.
So educationally, like my wife being an English teacher for 8 years, she and I would talk a lot about how there's some overlap between the way that an educator would structure a lesson and the way that a coach ought to structure learning. Because when you go through a lecture, that is one instance of that content being received.
Hmm.
If you then have them read it, it's a second instance of them hearing it, seeing it, and their brain processing it. But then when you have them verbally process it back to the teacher or to the coach or on another platform, their brain actually goes through this process of the learning 2 or 3 times to like stamp the memory in, because it has to process it at a higher level to be able to re-explain in their own words. So that's
Mm.
one of the reasons why a mastermind group like this is so important on a book like we're reading about, because it's a foundational kind of book, not like a tips and trick book. Because the tips
Yeah.
and trick book we should just be doing, right? Not talking.
Right.
But this is a book that kind of fundamentally changes the way that we think. So having a chance to regurgitate and talk and then hear and think and feel at the same time, it supercharges that learning.
Yeah. That definitely aligns with my experience of it, especially. And then this modality that we're just doing, you know, like meditation and prayer and listening, it's like it often will add the emotional aspect, which you just mentioned. It's like if you feel something attached to it, then that's a strong connector, right? And then the other big one is imagery. So like, and I think we should practice this and like make it a prominent thing, because like using our mind's eye, our imagination, when you get an image of what it is that's going on, it's really sticks with you. It's very powerful, and it just works well. It's like it's worth 1,000 words, you know. It's like I can remember images that I've gotten over the years that, you know, it's much easier than trying to remember like a paragraph of text or something. It's also sort of gets at why I was wanting to spend more than 1 week in chapter 1, for example. You know, it's like we got to kind of simmer in this stuff a little bit. I like how you put that, because then you get at like different, sort of at different levels, or processing it multiple times. That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. Okay, so did you guys spend any time with the questions from last week that I was kind of posing at the end? Like, what am I the best at? What energizes me? What would it look like to make this my focus? What's stopping me from doing it? That kind of stuff. How'd that go? And then I think let's dig into that about like, how'd that go? How does it interact with what we're doing right now? You know?
I got to change location. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been wrestling with like the limiting beliefs on some of the growth, and so context wise, I didn't set myself up for this business venture super well financially. So I know that I did a series of bad financial decisions well before I started my business that have impacted the way that I think about it, but it doesn't change the reality that getting over those decisions being made is how, like, that's how you mentally process it. And so I can fully believe two things at the same time: that it's important to take risks and go and spend and do and be, and holy cow, I still got to put food on the table.
Okay.
And so part of what I've been wrestling with is the idea that I have to conserve resources to have a situation in the future that makes it better to then spend the resources. Like, these are like contradictory thoughts, right? Like, I don't have to, it's not an either or, it's not a not until then kind of situation. So one of the identities that I'm trying to get over is the idea that I need to be involved in the same kind of platforms that other coaches are using. So I don't really want to build a course online. I don't really want to build the same kind of tools that make it more scalable for some people to have a business. And I've been avoiding figuring out what are alternatives, or like he said in this last chapter, what can you do that no one else is going to do that's actually going to make an impact? And so what I'm wanting to do is I want to do more facilitation. I want to do more public speaking. I want to do more research that gives me a chance to write books and make the same kind of impact in other people's lives that a whole host of authors and influencers have on my life. It's like being able to take all of their work and kind of fill in the gaps or combine some of them into areas that I see, like, for instance, like Lencioni's super good, but he has sort of a corporate mindset. Like, so some of his work doesn't speak specifically enough to the small business, medium-sized business world because it's so corporatese. But at the same time, if you look at some of the other materials, it's so low level that anyone who has 5 to 10 million in the revenue is like, yeah, that's really basic stuff. That we're talking peas and peanuts. And so it's like, to me, there's got to be someone who's in the middle. And so, like, I want to be in the space of creating content in the middle, but to be able to have that space for creating content, I got to have someone else doing my marketing. I got to have someone else doing my sales, and I got to have someone else who's manning the communication lines. And so, like, my best work is content creation and facilitation. And that's like 10 to 20% of what I actually get to do. And it's funny how he's talking about, like, find your 20 and do that. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I just going to have to build a whole bunch of revenue up. I got to make decisions that build the revenue up so that I can make more content. And maybe what it is I need to stop trying to create content now. Need to build the system so that I can then create the content, because I think that's where he was really hitting home on the guys like James Clear when he transitioned from blog writing to book writing. There was a pivot point, right? There was a point where his blog writing hit peak, and he was at a point where he could walk away to then hit that jump. I think I'm identified that I'm here, but I haven't hit the peak of my systems that allows me to make the jump. So I've got some work to do to even get to the place where I can jump, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. Yeah. Trying to process it. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, what's that? How's that?
It's a tough spot to be in, like,
Yeah.
where you know that, you know, to get to the next level, it's going to require some assistance, and you have to pay for that assistance, but you got to figure out how to get there. So
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat trying to figure that out too, just like where that comes together and feeling like I'm behind, you know. That's another one of those limiting beliefs that I have, that I'm, you know, that I waited too long, or it's not, you know, the timing's not right and all that. So I totally get it. And it does require persistence. It does require to go to God and hear directly again, clearly. Is this what you're calling me to? Is this it? Is this the audience? Is this the way to do it? Is this the vehicle? You know, all that stuff. And so in the meantime, you can kind of get stuck in that too, which happens to me.
So I want to just go with kind of like the free flow of thought here, right? Like what comes to mind. I think that's a good way to go a lot of times in this kind of discussion. So I like, I don't want to sit here and try to be prescriptive about what anybody should do. I think what the way I want to go with it from my role in this is to like ask the question that makes you dig deeper into whatever it is, right? So like here's the question I'm thinking of. When you look at any of us, when we look at our business and what we feel like needs to happen, like the dominoes that need to fall or whatever, the sequence of things that need to happen and before something else can happen, how much of that our belief about what needs to happen is based in absolute truth versus how much of it is based in our understanding of what normally happens or like best practices or like just common constraints. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like are those constraints real? Like are those obstacles or dominoes that need to fall? Is that actually true? And here's the like where I'm coming at it from, like I guess a biblical perspective or whatever, is like, how many times did God instruct people to do things that were completely bizarre, like the Israelites to march around the city and blow horns? It was like not a military strategy. No one would have ever thought that was something to do. And then when it came up, it did not sound like a good idea. Like it did not follow any playbook that any military strategist would use in that era. Like not even remotely. It wasn't even a military strategy, or it's like Gideon to like go and remove people from his army, like keep getting smaller and smaller. This is how you're going to win, like completely, just so many things. There's a million examples, right? So I don't know. Does that make sense? The question I'm asking, it's like, if I look at the constraints I think I'm under, maybe the first question is like, am I actually even under those constraints? Like how much of it is just not real?
Yeah, I think that was the visual I got with the smoke, that it's basically just a puff of smoke. Like it's it's not really substantive. So that's good. I mean, that's encouraging that's how God sees it, and that's what he put on my mind, and hopefully that's helpful for you guys of what are those things that are just smoke, and not real. And I think, again, sometimes we can get limited by things that actually are real struggles and are real limitations, but they're small. Like they can be overcome. And by our own strength and then by supernatural strength, be able to overcome the things. If we come to grips with our humility, our limitations, our confession, our recognizing our inability to do things, and who do we have around us that can do these things, and leveraging our network and
Yeah.
our sometimes realistically our limited resources, but what can we do with the limited resources that can get us to the next stage? I think that's always the question that I keep asking too.
Yeah.
It requires creativity, and it, like you said, Dowd, it requires imagination, to continue to kind of get these visuals of what does that look like specifically to overcome this next challenge.
Yep. That's exactly where I was going to go with the next. Like the thing I was thinking about was that word creativity. And it's like creativity is snuffed out or hampered when our mind is in the fear response, right? If there's any element of like that hesitation, anxiety, disbelief, all that kind of stuff, it pulls us back into like fight or flight, survival, scarcity, right?
Mhm,
That I think Jonathan, you already referred to.
mhm.
And so it's like, but it all seems it's so normalized, right? Like we think we're being prudent by doing that. If like we were to stop and think about it, well, this is just prudent. Like I have to think about this stuff, you know? And I think the challenge is like the radical approach is like, what if I actually didn't? Like, what if provision really was God's domain, or like the way making piece of it? And all that I was really being asked to do was to follow that vision. Like, I think, Jonathan, when you describe the things you're trying to do and like really want to do, that's what I think of. It's like, how can we clear any other constraint away from you just doing that stuff? You know, like what would that actually look like? What would have to be true for that to happen? And like, what would have to be true, not in only in circumstances or externally, but like in your inside of you, to be able to just like engage with that so fully without any like hesitation or, you know what I mean, like mental barrier, to unlock your creativity. Because I think that's where the actual solution, because we're not talking about like magic, we're still talking about like a real solution in the real world that's practical, that, you know, that actually it's an actual thing. And so I don't know, you see where I'm going with that though? It's like, what would have to happen for you to be thinking like, this is what I need to do? I need to do this, you know, like I know it, like you already know it. So then to mix the like the solution though, of like how to make it work, to like be in a position to essentially receive what that is.
I think part of it has to do with the way that the guys in the book talk about identifying what you actually want. And I think this is the first time that I actually explicitly heard someone say you should act on what you want, not what you need. And I'm still kind of chewing with that. Like as a Christian, like I couldn't not hear the heart is deceitfully wicked.
Yeah.
And what my heart wants is not always what's best. And so, you know, like I was going down this like rabbit trail. I kind of had to like, I'm like reading, I'm listening while I'm running, and I paused it and I'm trying to decipher and distinguish what's the difference between these base desires that are separate and divorced from the values of God and the values that I believe that I want my business to be able to accomplish for the kingdom. And then what has to be required, what has to be true for us to actually accomplish anything. And so like, where's I think the heart posture, where I landed is the heart posture that says, I want to accomplish this. The next statement is what makes the biggest difference. And why? Because like, you know, there's 5 of us in the room, we could all accomplish the exact same thing, and all 5 of us could have different motives. And at the end of the day, at the end of the world, right, God's going to judge our motives, not the actions necessarily, right? Because the actions could be the same, but when one conscience says not to do something, that's what you're judged on. That's what the Spirit's there for. So I think if I'm processing this verbally, right? I think what this works with, like how you have to do is like, if you want to be able to decide what has to be true, you have to start with what you actually want. And you then have to reconcile what you actually want with whether or not that's something that you should want, and how to adjust it to the wanting that you should want and the wanting that you don't want. And now you have a vision of what you can actually accomplish. And then you can go backwards from there. Right. So I think that's kind of where I'm wrestling now. I've done vision work for a long time. I help facilitate other people with vision work. But this is a really nice, this is a cool new like level up to the concept of vision work, because there's vision work that is, so like we don't want to like enter into the concepts of what's realistic. That's not what I'm like, that's a really bad thing to do when you're trying to visualize, when you're trying to do vision work. But this is what is actually going to meet the needs of the things that you want to do, the people that you want to meet needs for, not meet your own needs. That is a different space to be doing vision work on. And so like, I feel this sense of freedom to be a heck of a lot more specific in the things that I want, but then build the accountability structure in to is this something that you want for the right purpose, or is this something that you want for the wrong purpose? And how do you push it from one to the bucket to the next if something starts on the wrong spot? Because that's how companies atrophy in their purpose. That's how companies lose their direction, lose the secret sauce, whatever it is, like that magic that is in the creating space, the creating of the business. That's the energy, and that's why people are always trying to conserve that initial energy. But part of building in that initial energy has to be the process to continue that initial energy in future seasons of the business.
Anybody have thoughts on that? I have thoughts on it, but I want to
I
defer.
can, like,
to
see-
somebody
he's like-
I want
he's
to
go-
defer to somebody else before I go.
My only thought was you guys are really deep thinkers, and I'm not nearly as deep.
Okay. This is really good. This is totally getting at it, because I think that, like, there's a lot of elements to this, but one of them is, like, I think the whole unlearning, like unlearning my Christian religious upbringing that has this framework on my mind. Because what was the verse you just quoted? Like the heart is deceitful and that type of thing. Which obviously there's some truth to be found in that, and I would want to probably revisit the context of that and what it's talking about. Because, right, like if you look at it flatly, scripture contradicts itself all over the place. If something that was said in Hezekiah, whatever, then you read James or what, you know what I mean? It's just like you can easily make it put things up against each other that are in direct opposition. So we don't need to do that kind of stuff. But I would be curious, like, what's the heart of that message, like what it's getting at, because it's obviously something true and pertinent in the context that it's given, right? But to counter that thought pertaining to what we're talking about, the verse that popped in my mind is, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. So the question I think of is, like, what needs to be true of my desires if I can have anything that I want? What should be true of my desires? They should be, the word I like is redeemed, right? They should be in line with God's desires. But like this whole identity work to me is getting my own view of myself in line with God's view of myself, and my view of the world in line with God's view of the world, not for like pious morality, for creative innovation and productivity. Is a much higher calling than like just being good. You know what I mean? So it's like, what if I could trust that my desires were redeemed? And so then I can just go for it. And I don't have to have that whole like restraint of, well, everything that I want is evil and wicked at the core. You know what I mean? Because that can easily happen. But I think it happens more so when we're like in scarcity, which is another way of saying in sin, where like we are taking on the role of provider for ourselves, or, jealousy, greed, any of that kind of stuff starts to creep in. It's like my desires become warped and corrupted towards that end, which is just like a low bar. But what if God has put identity in me and like all this purpose, and it's a very high bar? But in order to go that way, I have to be free of all the constraints of like self-protection, self-preservation, provision, all that kind of stuff, and like leave that, be very trusting with that stuff. Does that make sense where I'm going with that? Like get freed up to like be creative and to follow the actual, like it's truly a desire. It's something I want to do. So I'm self-motivated to do it. I don't have to get all pumped up to do it. It's like already in there.
Yeah, I think that what's important about it is like contextually, that's Jeremiah that's talking, and obviously Jeremiah is talking to people who were completely depraved at that point. Like they had relinquished all actual connection to the Lord at the time, and so any religious practices that they were actually practicing were devoid of value, and so they're doing things for the wrong motivations, and that's what he's calling out. And so I guess where I'm where I'm headed with you. Like, I agree with you. I think the whole point is, as a New Testament believer in a different dispensation, with the Spirit actually enabling us versus having to go to a building for the Spirit to work, we have access to the right motivation. We have access to the right thoughts. And though our sinful bodies, sinful minds, sinful spirits have a tendency for wickedness, knowing who God is the fastest way of knowing whether or not our values at any particular moment have been tainted, or whether or not they're living in line with kingdom thoughts. So I think the self-discovery journey never ends, because as we seasonally change, as like our, like as we build our 10x different selves, we have to have that moment of recognition at the point of change, and less and less so as we live in that season. But as our aspirations expand, so do our temptations. And so as our aspirations change, it's important to identify what will kingdom living look like, and stick with that, and what will kingdom living not look like, and avoid that. And I think those are parameters that, just like any other statement that the guys in the books that I'm talking about, you're going to have to say no to stuff. You're going to have to put boundaries on yourself. And we have this concept in American culture broadly that limitations are a bad thing, but nothing could be further from the truth. Limitations are the way to provide the context for success. And in our instance, for success for us, we have eternal things at mind, including the businesses that we're building, because our businesses are a vehicle for building value.
Totally.
I loved his definition, by the way, his comparison of wealth to money, and distinguishing the two of them. Boy, if a Christian can't get behind that, I don't I don't know what else he could in that book, because there's so many other things that we could define as wealth in the way that we create context, culture, safety, value for our clients, for ourselves, and there very few of them relate to dollars and cents.
Yeah, remind us of that if you can. I mean, I remember what you're talking about, but
Yeah, so basically so I'm talking, it's the third chapter. He gets into this discussion as you start off in the third chapter. He says to 10x, we're not talking just about 10x revenue. We're talking about 10xing your wealth, and 10xing your wealth is completely separate than 10xing your revenue, because you could only 2 or 3 times your revenue, but have 10x the impact, and that's what we're talking about. Or you could have 100 times your revenue and not have a 10x impact.
Yeah.
And I love that distinction, because it's easy enough for us to start thinking about the revenue or the bottom line being that ultimate KPI, for the 10x, but it's just not.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Although it's, for sure, it's kind of that two-sided coin. It's like, but a lot more money does help in one sense, but then again, it's not necessary. It's definitely not the end in and of itself, and it's not even necessarily a requirement to have 10x like results or impact. So it's kind of, is it like where he's going more in depth in the 4 freedoms? I think that's a big thing, like freedom of time, freedom of relationships, freedom of purpose, and freedom of money, It's like, that's
well, and it's like he even addresses it, and I think he says it elsewhere in one of his talks, that finances are just the vehicle for wealth. They are the backbone of creating value for other folks. and you can't do that with none. You have to have some, you know.
Yeah.
So I always, I think that's something that I still wrestle with too, with not with setting my prices and stuff like that. Like I can care less. I could charge way more for what I do. I don't have limiting beliefs on my prices, but I think what's tough is working with addressing the people who I see that have needs that aren't willing to pay for it. I think that's where I still get hung up, is how do I
Mhm.
come up with offers? How do I come up with ways of helping folks that haven't had their eyes opened to what's required of them to get to the point where they can access that value? So I'll give you an illustration of that. So like I've got 2 mastermind groups in the works, and one of them is distinctly Christian, and it is not for business owners. It's for people who are coming to me for advice on a regular basis for business concepts. And I got to the point where I'm like, I just got to stop giving away my time for free.
Mhm.
I need a bucket to put these people in, and maybe even being together will help them get to the point in the mindset where they can start consuming content at a higher level and having higher traction, versus my other mastermind, which is the opposite. These businesses in this geographic location that I'm targeting are like 4 or 5 years away from this economic boom, because these businesses that have committed to moving their large operations to this county, and so they're like, I cannot pay you enough fast enough to get us to the point where we can actually handle the new business. And the conversations could not be more distinct in the
Hmm.
pricing, the content, the value. Like everyone over here in my mastermind group for my friends are like bickering with me on what they're going to get. And everyone over here is like, I literally don't care what it costs. Get me in the group.
Yeah.
Like I've got to get built up. And the value difference, not the pricing difference, but the values difference in these 2 groups is insane. Because these people
Yeah.
are the ones who need to improve more so than these people. But these people are willing to pay whatever it's required to level themselves up.
Dude. Yeah. 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 And so then you should charge the max, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, and I'm gonna.
yeah, no, exactly.
And in fact, the big thing for these other group of business owners, like they're trying to pay me for an exclusive group. Like they're wanting it to be more exclusive so that there is better connection, so that there is
Mhm.
better learning. So I may end up with 2 groups because of it. So they don't want a group that's any larger than like 8 or 9 people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. No, I have like a little bit of a similar this mastermind group has already helped me in this, type of way too. Like I've realized I needed to charge a lot more for what we're doing for people. And so we've got a new client coming on where that's the case. Like in the discussion, I asked him if he had a budget, and he was like, no, like we just got to get this stuff done. So then I made a proposal that was like, in line with everything, but it was like substantial. And he came back and he's like, okay, well, here's my actual budget. Like, here's what I can actually afford. But so then what happened is like, so then I scaled down the offer to match the budget. So I'm no longer overcommitted for an underpriced service. Right now, it's like my commitment deliverable level is like exactly matches what he's willing and able to pay. And so I feel like that's a huge win because it's the same type of thing. It's like I'm not, you know what I mean? It's like now the value is matching. But it took like the willingness to do that first, I think. And I think the other big thing is finding the audience, the people who are like who want to go there, right? Because the people who are going to try to be cheap and are going to try to argue with you about your cheap rates, it's like they're maybe just not the right, you know, not exactly your number one avatar. Jonathan, I was gonna show the Freedom Compass. Maybe I will. Who have you seen the Freedom Compass?
I'm not sure.
Let me just pull it up real quick. Jonathan could explain it.
I got to jump off in a few, but
You do? Yeah. Let's just
yeah,
touch on
I
this real
gotta.
quick.
I'm the ride to basketball practice for a couple.
Oh, nice. Okay. Here we go. I think this fits in with what we're talking about, just in terms of like narrowing down. But I mean, really, what I want to get to, if we're gonna need to wrap up pretty soon anyway, is like, what's the next step forward for everybody in terms of whittling it down? Like shaving off the 80%, finding the 20%. Like, what's the next action step, tangible step towards that? So I don't need to like force this in here if it doesn't quite fit. But Jonathan, I don't know, what do you think? Does this like align with what we're talking about?
Yeah. So what I've sort of been doing is figuring out that I have more. I have the majority of my work is in the drudgery zone. Like just as a startup, most of it's in a drudgery zone because it's
Really?
it's the I can do it, but I'm not proficient, right? So there's a difference. I think what I have argued with people with before is that they try to tell me that they're just not good at it. Well, the book, the guys in the book actually talk about the difference between proficient and mastery. Right? I actually think I'm proficient in a lot of things, but I'm not a master at it. And not being the master at it, it adds another layer to this compass that I've not really thought through, where it's like, I am not going to be a master automations architect. I don't like to speak in JSON. And so therefore I should not be doing it. It's not even that it's not that I don't want to do it, because I actually do enjoy it. So things end up being in drudgery or distraction for me.
Yeah.
I'm not at a point where in my life I can be I don't even get the distraction stuff necessarily. Those are the things that I've actively tried to prevent by being off of social, by not being around the wrong people, by not having notifications on my phone. Those are the distraction things that end up being kind of interesting. Or like, I guess there are some things that end up in distraction that end up being, or disinterest, because it's like, I could build a completely new business. Like I have a couple of people who want me to start a real estate business. Okay, that's disinterest, right? Like I could do that, but I'm not passionate about it. And so like it's important for me to make sure that I'm pushing things into these zones more often. So the high level productivity person struggles to get things out of the development zone. A lot of people who like to improve like to keep things in the development zone. When if you've given it any time and you're not moving it out of there, that's a problem. So as new things come on, so like I like to play with AI, that's a distraction.
Right.
Got to get it out of there. Got to get it out of the distraction, or I got to get it out of development. And it's like, oh, I could be good at it. No, don't. Stop. That's not, that. You already know what you are good at. Keep that in the passion zone. Keep it upstairs. I say keep it upstairs, like it's true north. So that's where I know facilitation and speaking are in my passion. They are not just something that I like to do, that I have had external validation that these are the best parts to what I do. And that's why I say content creation, speaking, facilitation have to be 80% of my day, or 80% of my
energy.
Energy.
Yeah. What do you do? Like, so can you take Hoove? Does this thing make sense? I mean, I feel like it's fairly self-explanatory, but like, does it make sense the way things are laid out on here?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
obviously want to be in the desire zone as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with the other three, and Jonathan is like certified in this stuff, by the way. I don't know if you knew that,
Uh-huh.
but full focus certified. So with the 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4 zones, do you want to run all of that through sort of like the way I think of it, free flow CEOs, like eliminate, automate, delegate? Like, what does it even need to be there? And if it does, that's the first on the flow chart. Like, does this have to get done? Yes or no? If no, can we please just get rid of it right now? Right. But that's probably a small percentage of stuff. More likely it's like, yes, it does. But then the question is, do I have to do it myself forever or even anymore? And then it's like, how do I eliminate or automate or delegate, right? Like, what options are there for getting this done where it's not me having to do it? So I would assume, like, in drudgery, even, like, there's probably still some things there that have to be there, that have to exist, right? Like
Yeah,
maybe-
absolutely. So like how I teach CEOs is that you can't escape the drudgery zone because you're a CEO. If you could escape the drudgery, it's going to be as a board member. That's the only way to escape the drudgery because you have escaped operational oversight. When you escape operations, you escape drudgery, but you still will have distractions and disinterest as a board member. You just don't have operations to control. So as you get into the higher levels of leadership, you actually do add drudgery back in. Now it's about energy management and making sure that you have things set up for yourself to be successful in that drudgery zone. So I got a CEO who's talking to me. He's in an engineering firm, and he's talking to me about how do I eliminate the stuff out of my drudgery zone. And I said, this is the wrong question for you. It's more at your level. You have to figure out, how do you set up the time and energy to accomplish the drudgery zone tasks in the most efficient way with your team. So whether that means your executive assistant, which he has, is setting these tasks up, spreading them out over the month so that you don't get hammered one day a week, or if you get to go offsite to accomplish some of this stuff, which you can because he's a CEO, he needs to do that. And then on the back end, it's important that someone checks his drudgery zone work. So I think that's where a lot of people miss that mark, is that once they realize that they have to do it, yeah, you still have to accomplish it, but someone else might need to check it just to make sure that it's done the right way. And that's where lawyers, CPAs, and accountants are really, not accountants, bookkeepers are really important, because they're certified at the mastery level to keep you from having problems in this zone. But there are some things, responsibility wise, you can't escape. The big thing is to be thinking through the filter, like you said, about the eliminate, automate, and delegate, is the distraction and disinterest zone. How can you play long enough in your distraction zone to feed your energy and then delegate it? So if you get distracted a lot by new things, you have to create time, space, and parameters for playing in your sandbox, and then get rid of it. And if you're in the disinterest zone too often, who usually a disinterest zone stuff is an automation. Bring something to automate it, whether that's a person, a partner, or an actual tech stack.
Yeah. Automate, delegate, whatever. Well, okay. So if I said to you 10-80-10, like 10-80-10, do you know what that is? Have we talked about that?
Are you talking about the energy 10-80-10?
Essentially the delegation 10-80-10.
Say it again, or explain it to me. Maybe, but
Yeah,
explain it
maybe
again.
we haven't. That's what kind of was asking. And Hoove, I don't know if does that ring a bell for you at all? Have we talked about that?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if we
Refresh
have or not either. Okay, so this is a big one. This comes from Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time, that whole ecosystem. So, and this may not apply to every single thing, like the way you're describing some drudgery stuff, Jonathan. I think maybe it's kind of backward, like opposite, like you have to do it and then somebody else has to check it. But in a lot of things, 10-80-10 means, as the decision maker, founder, CEO, whatever, right? last person who's guiding the ship, rather than feeling like you have to do either. The dichotomy is like, I either have to do it myself or I have to delegate it and like lose control of it. 10-80-10 is like, I do the first 10% and I do the last 10%, but the 80% in the middle, I have somebody else do it. So it's like, I set the vision, I set up the project, like, here's what we need to accomplish. Here's the major things that it needs to look like, just the criteria or whatever. Okay. And then who can do it? All right. So hand that off, you go, you do it. And then we're going to meet and we're going to go through it together, and I'll make any adjustments or tweaks or final sign off or whatever needs to happen before it gets released, or maybe there's another round of revisions or whatever. But the idea, the way I approach things, especially like with solo founders, is like, how soon and how often can you apply 10-80-10 to whatever it is you're doing, so that you stay out of the drudgery zone, holy cow, as much as possible, because that's just going to drain your energy. And also, so you stay out of distraction and disinterest. I would say particularly disinterest, where there's probably things that you are good at, so it's part of your business, but you don't really love doing them yourself anymore, but it still needs to get done. So I don't know, does that make sense? Like, and yeah,
I love that. I'm not sure that I've heard that explained from you before, but I'm vaguely familiar with that. I think it depends on the season and size of your business, what that determines on what, like that
Sure.
ratio. Because I think the more corporate you get, the more likely you have the chance of, not corporate, the more developed your company, the more chance you have of passing that 80 off completely.
Sure.
I think where I've tried to help my guys remember is that you can't abdicate responsibility for the things that only you can do. There are
No.
some things as a CEO you can't delegate. And even if it's in your drudgery zone, you got to figure out a way of getting it done. So for instance, the
Yeah.
big one that people come to me about is culture work.
Mm.
Okay. Culture work cannot be delegated if you're the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to figure out a way of figuring it out in the CEO spot. But if we're talking about bookkeeping or HR, like litigation, or not litigation, liabilities and those kinds of things, like procedural stuff, yeah, seriously, get someone else to do it. You tell them how you want it to go, and then you, on the back end, that back 10%, that's all about accountability. It's all about making sure that it was done the way that you set it up to be done.
Yeah. Well, like, let's use culture as an example, because here's where I think I don't disagree with you, right? Like, to some extent, you have to just own that. But here's where I see this like playing out. Like, and this applies to me specifically. Let's say I want to build culture in my organization, and I want to have some materials like a deck or like a poster to put on the wall, or a series of emails or something to go out. You know what I mean? Like, I want to put my framework into a tangible thing. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want somebody who's good at Canva, like Anne, to do that kind of stuff. So it's like, I write an outline with the ideas and the philosophy and the stuff that I want. And then, like, somebody else make this pretty, you know what I mean? And then it comes back to me at the end, and it's like, then I'm like, oh, let's tweak this and that and change that to really like sound exactly how I want it to sound and look how I want it to look. But I just handed off 80% of the work of getting that done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did not give up like really any of the control, like what is being communicated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's where you got to define clearly what ends up in that first 10. And that obviously is going to be dependent on the project.
Yeah.
But I think that that goes to like the principles of management as well. Like, I hate management as a word, but I think it does go to the principles of management. Like, you aren't responsible for a $9 an hour job as the CEO. You are responsible for the $900 an hour jobs.
Right. Exactly.
That's you.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, people are dropping off, which I totally get. Who've actually entered something in this week's to-dos or his action items. So maybe we can finish with that. Yeah, I think this is all like really good and helpful stuff, I don't know if like asking people to have something. I like asking people to have something like at the end of the meeting, like what can we put in here? But also if you don't have it, then to go back and add it. Make it a little bigger so it can be viewed on here. So I don't know. Any thoughts coming to mind offhand of like what's a good takeaway for you or to do for this week?
Yeah, I put mine in.
Oh, there it is. All right, perfect. Job profiles as in like other people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Cool.
it didn't have to necessarily be a person I hire like as an employee, but I need to figure out what my team is supposed to look like better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, nice. Yeah, you mentioned that before too in previous weeks, like delegating something, right?
Yep. Yeah, like
Yeah.
even today I was working with an automation stupid thing.
Like something you shouldn't have been doing yourself, you mean, or what? Or like
Yeah,
something you're trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's probably something that I shouldn't have. I mean, it's like that. Like when you have the resource, that's when I have the resources. Paying someone else to do my business
Mm-hmm.
structural stuff is the first thing to be hired out. That's for sure. Like that's 100% because it's interesting enough to me that I will get lost in it, and then half a day or more happens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I just watched 4 videos on YouTube to be able to do that one thing.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Yeah. Do you have the not to do list?
Yes.
I want to make that like I kind of want to almost transition from this spreadsheet to that tool, but like I've been refining that a little bit, so it should work better and better.
Yeah.
But I was gonna have everybody like pull that up, log into it, and start building their list and like save a list. And one of the edits I just made recently was to be able to go back and edit a saved list. So if you go into that and pull it up and start building your like a list, then you can go back and add to it and change it. And I think it'd be cool if like all of us ended up with, you know, our first version of a list. We could start thinking about like what things can we really unload.
Yeah. Did you say that you were building that out where I could use that as like a tool as a partner?
Oh yeah. Let me figure that out. Yeah.
So in January, I'm doing this workshop on leading change. And part of the thing that I'm going to do, I really want to use that as so I'm building a Notion site for all my resources for that workshop instead of having a single download.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be one of the things that I would love to give people access to.
Yeah. I mean, in its current form, it can be given out right now. Like I have super admin, so I'll like see everybody who's in there.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I mean,
That's fine.
But like they would each have their own siloed off login. Like they get to it and tells them to log in with an email or Google or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it's good to go now. The only, I don't know if you need one that like it'd be, I don't know if I could do this or not, but to create another layer of administration where you could have a subgroup that could see some of them and not all of them, like for an organization or something. But as of now, individuals can just use it.
Yep.
Yeah. So you should be able to share the link you've got and to anybody.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd love that, man. That'd be, yeah. Obviously, that's my like one of my. I think it's gonna become a very prominent lead magnet for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah,
hopefully it's useful just in and of itself. Nice. And any to-dos for the week? Like I'm trying to think about mine here.
Oh, for the upcoming.
Yeah, just action
week?
item for the list. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do last week's, so I think I might have to. I had a new one, but I think I'd rather, revisit last week's.
Yeah.
Take 2.
Freeze. This way I can. There we go. Two nights, yeah. Yeah.
All right. This is awesome, guys. I got to jump.
Yeah, man. Good stuff today. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you all soon. Yep.
Bye bye.
See ya.